And now I'm being joined on the program by former Minister of National Planning Commission, Mr. Shamsuddin Usman. Mr. Usman, good morning and thank you for coming in.
Good morning, it's my pleasure.
Let's look at most of what transpired yesterday, most of the sessions. It was all about maximizing the potentials of Africa. Africa has enormous potential. The growth story about Africa is changing, is rising every day. Currently, it's rising to over $2 trillion, at least what we had, before the whole meeting started. But what are your thoughts on all the discussions that have been ongoing, all the conversations that have been going on so far?
I think, first of all, a lot of the conversation is useful. A lot of it has been done before. I think what is more important than the conversation is a lot of the practical ideas that are coming out of it and the commitments that are being made. For example, one of them, this commitment by the Nigerian business community to protect schools. This is a practical thing that has come out of this as a result of the kidnapping of the girls by Boko Haram in Borno. But also some, important business decisions are being done, and so it's not just a talking forum, but more of an action point. And I think that is really what is the most critical about this.
Now, in terms of talking about action, you're the former Minister of National Planning Commission. Of course, you know that our population in Nigeria and Africa generally is very huge. And of that population, over 60% are the youth. But still, looking at such an army, it's been next to impossible to harness the potentials of this army and properly challenge them. Why?
Well, I think sometimes it's obviously that in the past we've not given the issue enough focus. And that's why we were just going out for growth. Now it has to be inclusive growth. And I think the fact that not only the world, but Nigeria is focusing more squarely on this, coming out with a number of very clear and specific programs, like the various youth schemes to try to get these youth to become useful to themselves first and then to society. Various projects that are ongoing, the UWIN and the various other schemes, they are small to begin with, but once you begin to gain traction with them, I think you'll begin to see that it is very important. But one thing that comes out is that the business community also has to play a significant role. Government alone cannot do this, because in any case, the capacity for government to create jobs is very limited. The business community has to come in. And there are a number of very big projects that are being conceptualized or that have been. And we need now to begin to look at this. To give you one or two examples, just to look at the northeastern zone where we have these challenges now, security challenges. There is what is called the Great Green Wall Initiative, which is a plan to build a 15-kilometer green wall across the whole of the Sahel, about over 7,000 kilometers. Now this will traverse the whole of the north, literally, especially going up to the northeast and beyond into Central African Republic. Now, to do this project, it will take years to do. And you can imagine the thousands of youth that you can actually occupy in a project of this nature. The refloating of the Lake Chad. Lake Chad used to provide a livelihood for thousands, hundreds of thousands of people in that region and across the whole of the 5 or 6 African countries through which the lake goes. Now, so government actually has to now take some of these projects and begin to look at them much more seriously, because the capacity of those projects, especially with some private sector support, with some support from the development partners, many of whom are very keen to be able to do something about addressing some of those problems of the youth and the insecurity and so on. You need these kinds of very big, you had, for example, the presidency, what is needed is big infrastructure projects to begin to actually create jobs and even if it is on a temporary basis. And while these youths are being occupied, you can even do it through what is called conditional cash grant, just to get them engaged, to get them to have a trade, to get them to have some skills, and to get them to have some means of taking care of themselves and their families.
What about education?
Education is also very fundamental. But when you talk of the youth, I thought you were talking of...
Yeah, because it's in the age bracket of between
That is true.
Over 15 and close to even 40, 35 years old.
No,
So
education is very fundamental. The beauty of education itself and health, maybe what we call social infrastructure. Once you provide social infrastructure, that is, provide people with a good education, and good does not mean necessarily academic only, actually academic as well as technical education, skills, and some fairly good degree of health, then you find that a lot of people will take care of themselves, will develop the necessary capacity and entrepreneurship to take care of themselves, so that it's, they won't be lacking around doing nothing or running around government offices looking for government jobs.
at one of the sessions, one of the panelists, it was actually the session where the president, was among the panelists, actually talked about the fact that, politicians should begin to focus more on the economical horizon than political horizon. All of them, in spite of the fact that politics is what they really know and understand, it is important to begin to build the economic landscape as well, because if the people are not comfortable, in terms of having the basic amenities, then they really will not even be interested in what goes on in the political sphere. So in our context now, how can we begin to, challenge our political leaders to begin to focus more on economical development of the people?
Well, when I was in the private sector, I used to have that view. I used to say, look, these politicians, just forget about politics, let's focus on the economy. But with the number of years I've spent in the public sector, especially looking at what is happening with the politics, I have also come to the conclusion that, unfortunately, unless you get the politics right, the politics is so consuming. Unless you get it right, the real focus on the economy that you want politicians to give will not be there. So I think it's not a question of either this or this. We must work on both. It's very important to also get the politics right, because that is what will give them the time to now focus on the economy. If you don't get the politics right, unfortunately, you will have a situation like now where everybody seems to be, the main focus is on the politics and not enough on the economics. And I think a warning to the core politicians also is that, unfortunately, if you also do not pay attention to the economics, it will actually come back to haunt you. So really, I think what we need to do is to focus on both. Let's try and get the systems, the institutions to be working. That is very important. Once we do that, then you find that the appropriate focus will be on the economics, because that is, at the end of the day, that's what makes a difference to the ordinary man.
Yes, because I was going to ask, you're in the public sector before, now you're in the private sector, and your perspective definitely would have changed on how best it is that we can, run the economy. Of course, most of the investors say that the environment is, at least from what it used to be till now, it's a little better. But we're expecting a higher influx of private investors to come into the country. What are your thoughts? What are your expectations with these investments that are coming in?
I think it's an indication of the confidence that they have on the Nigerian economy, the fact that they are also taking a more medium to long-term perspective. Because if they were to look at the short term, with all the warnings about Boko Haram and kidnapping in other parts of the country, if that's what people are looking at, nobody would come to Nigeria. But the fact that they are coming and they are bringing some large sums of money, and it's not just what is called hot money, which is very short term, which just comes into the capital market and gets out. It's equity, a lot of equity, a lot of long-term investment is also coming into the country. That is good news for the country. And I think what many investors have discovered is that Nigeria is one of the few countries where you can have the kind of returns that you can have probably nowhere else in the world. Partly because of our challenges in infrastructure and systems and so on. Obviously, as these improve, the margins will continue to decline. But for many years to come, Nigeria will be clearly an investment haven for any foreign investor. And not only foreign, you had Aliko Dangote yesterday.
Yes.
You know, Nigerians should also believe in Nigeria and invest their money here because, again, the returns are quite good. And it's quite interesting. I just came back from a trip to London to discover that many Nigerians that used to own houses in London are actually selling them and bringing the money back to Nigeria to invest because even if it is real estate or whatever, you make more money in Abuja and Lagos and Port Harcourt in real estate than you can in London and many other foreign places.
Well, thank you so much, sir, for speaking with us. But just before I let you go, let's quickly get your thoughts on this, please. The fact that we have, you know, a population of over 170 million and counting. Definitely our population is growing. The policies that we have in place, are they enough to encourage the kind of growth that we're seeing?
The policies will continue to choke up a growth of certainly between 5 and 7% for a considerable period of time. But is that enough given our growing population? I don't think so. And that is part of the challenge for this country. You know, the population explosion in any country, especially the youth population, can be an asset and can be also a negative.
Yes.
It all depends on how, now the other question you asked me, the inclusiveness with which that growth takes place, how we bring in that population to make them much more productive. Then you will have a situation where the GDP per capita is beginning to rise. Right now it's quite low. But again, it's not unusual. You had the Chinese president yesterday. His country has been one of the fastest growing, is now probably the second largest economy in the world, heading to be the first very soon. But in terms of per capita, they also have, I mean, they are very, very low. They are about below hundreds in the world. But I think what is important is to systematically work at making sure that every person in the population feels the impact of that growth. And the kind of policy that we are moving to, I believe, are the sort of policies that will ensure that in the future.
Mr. Osman, thank you so much for joining me on the program this morning. It's been an interesting conversation.
It's my pleasure.
And do enjoy the rest of the sessions that will be going on today.
Thank you very much.